Hey guys, we are back for another week of playing and creating and just having fun. This week's video, I am playing around with some rice paper from Connie Lines Designs, sweet Pickins Milk Paint. Both of those are available on my website, sgvintagecrafts.com, as well as I am using some IOD molds and some IOD transfers to create some beautiful projects. If there is anything in this week's video that you like, please head on over to my website, sgvintagecrafts.com. All of the projects that I created in this week's video are loaded on my website, but they will only be there for the next week or so. Then they will be taken down and go on their little journey to my booth at Angry Mama's in Dahlonega, Georgia. So if there's something that you really like, head on over there and pick it up before it goes away. I guess I should introduce myself if I haven't yet. Sorry. If you're new here, my name is Leanne and I am the face behind Small Gestures Vintage and Crafts, and I'm very glad that you're here with me today. Before we get started in this week's video, I just have to say, you guys, I am blown away. Last week's video, it has not even been a week yet and we're closing in on 28,000 views. I'm blown away. I truly am. And I just want to thank you guys. There are so many creators out there that you can watch. So when you choose to watch one of my videos, it really touches me and I really appreciate it. So if you're ready to come along on this week's journey, stick around and let's do it. So for my first project this week, I picked up this votive holder at Goodwill and I liked the shape of it. It was in pretty rough shape though. Lots of cracks that needed to be filled. I think this is a Magnolia Home product. I think that's what was on the tag. So originally sold at Target, and I think the tag on the bottom was like $42, but I got it for I think maybe $5. So I'm gonna fix it up with some Bondo spot putty to fill in these areas that there's some pretty major cracks and dents. We're gonna fill those up and smooth them out. So the original plan was just to smooth out the Bondo and leave the black, but the more I got looking at it, I really just wanted to have a dark stained wood piece that I could distress the paint back to. So I'm coming in with some DIY Dark and Decrepit. I love using this as a stain because it's not stinky and I can use it inside and it gives you a beautiful dark stain. All of my IOD and my DIY products I get from Heather at Create Your Own Cozy. If you do not have a stockist already that you buy those products from, in the description box there is a link to Heather's website, and I am an affiliate for Heather. She will just give me a small thank you, and if you purchase through the link, then it helps both of our little businesses. And I apologize for this blurry shot. I did not realize it was out of focus, but I'm just using the oak leaves and acorn mold from IOD, and I dusted the whole thing with cornstarch and just filled up this whole mold, and I am just pulling them out. I like to flip it over and just kind of let gravity work with you. You always have to be careful at the end because I'm scared the mold is going to pop up on me. If you do molds a lot, you know what I'm talking about. And then I'm just coming in with a damp brush just to smooth out the edges and get rid of some of the little clay bits that are hanging on before I decide to glue them down. So my castings are glued down and I am just coming in with some DIY paint with a mix of white swan and crinoline. And the castings are not dry yet, but I do like painting over them while they're still wet. So they do not dry too fast and it really decreases the cracking. And I had painted them all before I realized that I wanted to distress this with some beeswax. So, and look at the cute little bee and the sunflower on there. So this beeswax bar is from Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, and I do have this in stock on my website at sgvintagecrafts.com. And you just rub the beeswax over the surface and it acts as a resist. The paint will not adhere to the wood wherever you rub the beeswax bar. So it really makes distressing a lot more easy. And so once you've got the beeswax on, then I'm just coming in with some paint. This is just straight crinoline by DIY. I decided I didn't want to mix and honestly deal with the hassle of mixing the two colors for all of the sides of this. So this is straight crinoline, and I'm just giving all sides a solid coat. And it took, I think it really only took 2 coats for this piece. So I started out with a metal scraper, and then I just decided to get my little finger sander, and you can see in areas where it looks like there's grease, that's the actual wax from the beeswax bar. And I'm just taking my finger sander and rubbing over it and just pulling back the paint in those areas, and you can see it only pulls back and distresses where I rubbed that beeswax bar. So after it was all distressed and sanded smooth, I took it outside and blew it off to get rid of all that chalk dust, and then wiped it down with a damp rag, and then applied some DIY clear wax to the top of it to seal all that paint in. I wanted the contrast in the molds to be a little more subtle. I didn't want it to be dark like a dark wax. So I am using some antiquing glaze and just putting it in the castings and around the edges just a little bit, and then wiping it back just so I can kind of fade it out so you see a little more of like a shadow around the castings, but it still pulls out the detail and highlights it. And then I finished it off with a little bit of rub and buff in the color Autumn Gold. I thought that would blend nicely with kind of a coppery color with the color of the paint and would make a perfect centerpiece for a fall table. My second project is this bright blue beauty. I found this at a yard sale actually last weekend for a whopping 25 cents, so I could not pass it up. It got a good cleaning, and then I gave it a coat of spray paint in kind of a metallic bronzy color by Behr. I'm going to put a transfer on this, and I know it's going to crack, so I want to embrace that, and we are going to put some Sweet Pickins Milk Paint on the top. This is in the color Creamy. When I use milk paint now, I make sure I have 2 scoops because I like putting the water in first and then coming in with a dry scooper to scoop out the powder. I think it mixes a little bit easier and doesn't clump so much at the bottom. But I use my milk frother, I love this little thing, and then mix it for a couple of minutes and then let it sit for about 10 minutes. If you're fairly new to milk paint, when you put that first coat on, it can be scary. Don't worry, just keep going with it. The first coat is very light and it's not the greatest, but as you continue, the opaqueness builds up and you get a beautiful finish to it. It did take me about 4 coats for this pumpkin because I am painting a really light color over a dark surface. All of the Sweet Pickins products in this video can be found on my website, sgvintagecrafts.com. I am now a stockist for Sweet Pickins Milk Paint, so I carry all of the products that I'm using. Feel free to go check it out if you need anything. And I did use a heat gun with this pumpkin very sparingly. I was very fast when I moved it. It was on a lower heat. I did want some cracking, but I certainly didn't want to melt the foam pumpkin. I am thrilled with the amount of cracking that I got on this pumpkin, and I think it's going to be the perfect background. The transfers that I am going to apply to this cutie is from IOD Painterly Florals, and we've got lavender, we've got roses, and most importantly, big, beautiful sunflowers. Applying the transfers at the top, I was so happy because they released so easily and transferred down. You'll see in some of these video that I think I captured, there are areas on these sunflowers I barely had to push down at all. Like, they released so effortlessly and easily. The shape of the pumpkin provided a challenge. At times, these transfers did not. When the transfer goes opaque, like right there, then you can tell that it has actually released from that carrier sheet and has adhered down to your surface. And I just started on one side and kind of held the transfer up because I didn't want it to stick prematurely, and I just tried to work across, up and down and across over the, what are they called, the ribs, I think that's what they're called, and just really tried to make sure that I had the transfer down in each of those grooves. I knew I was going to get some cracking, but I wasn't worried about it in the least. All of my creations in this video will be on my website, sgvintagecrafts.com, in the shop section under Upcycled Decor. I will have them listed on my website for the next week. When my video comes out next week, then I will take them down and they will go down to my booth in Dahlonega, Georgia at Angry Mama's Antiques and Interiors. So if there's something in today's video that you like, please do go check it out and maybe pick it up if it's something you want to add to your home decor. I wanted to layer a couple of transfers here because I didn't like that sharp cut edge. So you guys tell me if you see the almost huge mistake I made with this. Yep, right there, that's where I was praying that it wouldn't stick onto the plastic. I almost applied the transfer onto the plastic of the sunflower. So luckily, crisis averted. It took me a minute to figure out what I wanted to do, and I decided to pull up that little bud and reapply and just reposition it a little bit. And one of the things that I love about the IOD transfers is you can see I tore this transfer twice there, just intentionally, because I wanted to separate it, because I did kind of need to layer them a little bit. But when you can put them back together and you can barely notice that it was torn in any way, shape, or form. All of the transfers have been applied and burnished down, so now we're moving on to the pumpkin stem, and this big boy pumpkin needs a little more substantial stem, in my opinion. So I'm using one of my little finials, and I am just coming in and staining it with some Dark and Decrepit. And I wanted to, because the foam only goes down a couple of inches or so, I filled it with the hole there in the finial. I filled it with glue and then wedged in 3 toothpicks, and I added more glue and then just secured it into the foam in the pumpkin. So it glued it on the inside, and then I added lots of glue on the outside to make sure that this little stem was not going to go anywhere. to the last remnants of my Spanish moss, and it worked out perfectly. I just pulled out a clump and it had like a little ring right there ready to go. So I just secured it, glued it down, and secured it around that finial to kind of hide where the top of the pumpkin was cut, and just kind of finish it off just a little bit. So it was probably at about this point that I realized I have not sealed anything in yet. So I came in with DIY's clear wax and gave it a good buffing all over to seal in those transfers. And that milk paint is just like DIY paint. It can be water activated essentially and needs to be sealed in. To finish this little cutie off, I came in with some dark oil wax by Sweet Pickins and a small brush, and I just kind of brushed it up the ribs right there. Not all the same all over, some were heavier, and just kind of blended it in just to give a little bit of shadowing and a little bit of extra depth and dimension. I am really in love with this pumpkin. What do you think? Project number 3 this week is a little sign makeover. I think I got this from Hobby Lobby, 95% off a couple of years ago. And one of the papers from Connie Lines Designs, the painted photographer, this paper is called Toil and Trouble. And I am just painting this sign. I did sand it a little bit just to make sure that the lettering was smooth. And then I'm just giving it a couple of coats of White Swan by DIY. And if you have ever used Connie's rice papers, sometimes if you use Big Top, because Big Top is a thinner medium and rice paper is a thicker paper, sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge and the paper may lift up on you, and you might have to use more product. So she has recommended in her videos using this heavy gel matte medium, and she mixes it, and that's what I did. I mixed a little bit. You can see just how thick this stuff is. I mixed it with a little bit of DIY, a little bit of Big Top by DIY to thin it out, and then this is my decoupage medium, and holy cow, does it make a big difference. I applied a starter strip there at the bottom and spritzed the paper just to kind of loosen the fibers. And you can see there's, in the little wood sign, it's got slats, so I wanted to make sure I didn't cut through, because I'm going to cut those slats and I didn't want to cut the top of the hat off. So I just started decoupaging it down, and this seriously is a game changer. Like, I will use this whenever I use the rice papers. Because it just makes the gluing so much more effortless. After I glued down the top, then I came into the edges, to the corners, and I gave them a little cut on the corner because I want to wrap it like this is a wrapped canvas. I don't want to have white sides. I really want to take the decoupage paper over to the side, so I just applied a little bit more of that mixture and then worked on each of the opposite sides, glued it down, and then once the sides were dry, then I could sand them off and work on the top and bottom pieces. I did have to make a little fix on the top here because when I wrapped it, I didn't take into account that it would be showing the top margin, the white margin of the paper, and I didn't like that. So I just have another strip of gray paper that I'm just gluing over the top just to hide that white strip just a little bit. So after everything was dried, then I just stained the back with some DIY Dark and Decrepit just to get rid of that light raw wood color, and I cut slits on the top and then top coated the whole piece with some top coat final finish in matte by Sweet Pickins. I did not realize until I became a stockist for Sweet Pickins that they offer a top coat just like Big Top, but this is from Sweet Pickins, and it's nice to have an alternative so you don't have to use just wax or an oil wax on top of milk paint or on top of your finishes. For my fourth and final project this week, we are just going to do a little book makeover. I love buying thick hardbound books, and we are going to use one of the transfers from Clementine. I really like this transfer book. This is the new one that is part of the IOD holiday release that just came out a couple of weeks ago. And I like this because, I'm sorry, I can't quite get into Christmas yet, and this has great fall vibes. So I'm going to put a transfer on, but you know me, I like texture, so it's all about the tissue paper and decoupaging crumpled up tissue paper on top of the book. I want to get some texture on there before I put that transfer down. Some challenges on the spine when I started trying to put the tissue paper on the spine. It wasn't sticking, and then I realized because the spine and the edge is more of a fabric that the Big Top was just soaking right into it. So I used that same mixture of that gel matte medium with the Big Top and applied that, and then it went down like a charm. Before I painted, I actually came in with a second layer of the crumpled up tissue paper, and now this is DIY's paint in crinoline. is thoroughly dry. I have not top coated the paint, so I actually tested it and I did a little transfer of a moth on the spine just to make sure I wasn't going to have a problem. Sometimes there can be issues if your paint isn't thoroughly dry, but it went down perfectly fine. So I pulled out these beautiful clementines and thought this would just make a really pretty cover to this revamped book. I also finished this book off with the final finish top coat in Clear Matte by Sweet Pickins, and I had wrapped the tissue paper right on the inside of the book there and painted that as well. So even though I have tied the book closed, you don't see any raw edges from the book. And that finishes it off. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed this week's projects. If you haven't already, please feel free to like, subscribe, and share my video if there's someone that you know that might like my content, and leave me a comment. I would love to hear from you. So thanks again for watching, and until next time, take care.